Feeling daunted by an upcoming trip and have no idea what to pack? Struggling to fit your maximalism into the confines of airline-approved carry-on? Want to bring your entire hat collection on vacation? Same. But don't worry, I've got you. As someone who dresses in vintage fashion every day and vintage fashion as I travel, this video is for you. I've got some tips and tricks of how you can bring your fabulous everywhere you go. I am so excited to share my travel tips with you. For those of you who dress in vintage style, even those of you who don't, there's lots of tips in here for you. But if you do dress in vintage style every day, make sure you stay to the end for some specific vintage tips. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do for more vintage fashion, vintage sewing, and vintage lifestyle tips and tricks. So please subscribe. I would love to see more of you. Okay, so my bestie and I, we are going to Portugal in just a few weeks. So I've been thinking a lot about packing, what I'm going to bring, and all that great stuff. We've decided to fly carry-on, so that makes things a little bit complicated as far as packing goes. But when I released my Mexico dress video, I asked if y'all wanted to see a packing video of how I travel in my vintage fashion. And so many of you commented saying that yes, you would love to know. So thank you for commenting, and wish granted. I am competitive when it comes to packing. It is very difficult for me to narrow down my massive wardrobe as a clothing enthusiast into something that is small enough to carry on my back comfortably with me as I go. I don't want to have too many items. I don't want to be missing anything. I don't want to be too hot or too cold. Maybe that's just me. But there are lots of packing videos out there, but let's say my needs are just unique. So there's a lot of considerations that go into what I bring when I travel. I've got some really great tips to help you synthesize your wardrobe into a capsule wardrobe for travel. Let's start with equipment. So it all starts with the bag. What bag are you bringing? What bag have you paid for? What bag do you own? I've decided to travel with my 40-liter Osprey travel backpack. I bought this while I was actually backpacking in Australia, and it served me very well. While it's not as glamorous as my rose gold wheelie bag suitcase, it's much easier to move about with, especially because I'm going to Portugal, which is lots of hills, lots of slippery and bumpy cobblestones. I don't want to be lugging around a wheelie bag. So we're going to go the less glamorous route and just go ahead with a backpack for this trip. If I was traveling with a checked bag, I would use a wheeled suitcase, which opens up a ton of other possibilities. In addition to my big travel pack, I'll also have a personal item, so a day pack that will fit my water bottle and all the things I'll need while I'm out and about during the day. And if I have room, I might bring a cute little purse or clutch or something, but we'll see. Okay, let's get into the travel tips. So tip number 1, and I've said this already, build a capsule wardrobe. That means packing interchangeable pieces that all go together so you can have multiple outfits with fewer items. Sounds simple, right? But when you dress like this, it's not so simple. So how do we do this? I mentioned Australia already. I backpacked throughout Australia and India for 6 months, and it might surprise you that you basically need the same amount of clothes for 1 week as you do for 6 months. I'm only really going to pack about 5 or 6 days worth of clothes for my 10-day trip. I'll get back to that later. You don't need more items the longer your trip is. And, well, that is if you do it right. So I'm going to help you do it right. There are tons of capsule wardrobes out there on the ye old interwebs. However, I have learned a lot from those, but I find that they often focus on black and beige and gray and boxy and plain styles that just aren't me. So I don't own those items. I can't put those wardrobes together very easily. While those utilitarian styles, those neutrals and those boxy items are comfortable and functional, they're just not me. So if you're a floral, fitted, flamboyant girly like me, you need something a little different. So how do you build a capsule wardrobe that fits your wild style? This one's for you. That brings us to tip number 2. Pick a color scheme and stick with it. And spoiler alert, it doesn't need to be black and beige. For my trip to Portugal, while researching places to go and places to stay, I was so inspired by the blue and white tiles that decorate the architecture across Porto and Lisbon, so 2 of the main destinations I'll be visiting. And your girl loves a theme, so I chose blue and white as my color scheme for this trip, with a few pops of pink because, you know, it's me. Conveniently, I already own a lot of blue and white items, so it's not a big deal for me to put this wardrobe together using pieces I already have, which I would recommend. Don't try and be someone else on vacation, unless that's your vibe. But choose things you already wear. You likely already have clothing items in your wardrobe that are in somewhat coordinating colors. You get dressed every day, right? So don't stress yourself out. Just wear your favorite items. I tend not to buy new clothes for a trip because I want to make sure that I'm wearing my greatest hits. You know, those items that are tried and true and tested. They have not failed me in my real life, so why would they fail me on a trip? However, I do tend to make items for trips. But that's because I can control all of the variables. But more on that later. Okay, color scheme. Sort it out. Tip number 3. What is tip number 3? Tip number 3. Once you have your color scheme all picked out, and it's a color scheme that your wardrobe can support, build your wardrobe from the bottom up. And often that's actually from some of the most difficult decisions to the easiest. So stay with me. I tend to make giant packing lists. Yes, I have a Portugal packing spreadsheet, and what? And I focus on 5 main categories from the bottom up. Those main categories are shoes. Why am I starting at the top? Shoes, dresses, bottoms, tops, accessories, and underthings. So once you've made those categories, you can start to build your capsule wardrobe. And I don't think it needs to be said, but I'm going to say it anyways. Build your wardrobe based on the weather that you will be encountering when on your trip. Check the weather ahead of time and make sure you're prepared for the unique needs of your trip. Okay, category number 1. Let's talk about shoes. I love shoes. Shocking, I know. But I have big feet. I'm tall, okay? It's just is what it is. So I try and minimize the number of shoes that I bring on a trip. They're bulky, they take up a lot of room in my suitcase, and you really only need a few good pairs of shoes for your trip. I would recommend bringing a good pair of walking shoes, usually runners, or boots if you're in a colder weather climate, a pair of slightly dressier shoes, so maybe those are flats or sandals, and then maybe a third pair of shoes if you need a special occasion pair of shoes, such as, I don't know, hiking boots, or maybe you're going to a beach and you need flip-flops. Whatever the case is for your trip, you pretty much only need 3 pairs of shoes. Even if you have tiny little baby foots, still minimize the number of shoes that you bring on your trip so that you don't have to lug them around everywhere you go. I find that I walk a lot when I'm traveling, and a lot more than I do in my everyday life. I have been road testing all of my shoes before I go on this trip, so I can sort of narrow down the list to those that cause the least amount of problems for me and are the most comfortable that I can wear all day. So to break in your shoes, yes, you can wear them around the house, but I recommend going on longer journeys if you can. So I've been wearing my travel shoes to walk Bow, to walk to the office, to run errands in. Any way that you can sort of stress out those shoes and make sure that they don't give you blisters is a really great way to start. Now, road testing your shoes and breaking them in is a little bit tough if you're going on a warm weather holiday in the middle of a cold season. When I went to Mexico in the middle of February, I couldn't necessarily break in my shoes by walking the dog. Not an option for me in my cold weather climate. But you can wear those shoes around the house or even do a good old mall walk. I don't know what you do. Next up on our list, we've covered shoes. Let's talk about dresses. Now, this is a particularly difficult category for me because I mostly wear dresses and I love all of my dresses, and it's just tough for me to narrow it down. So I try and choose dresses that I am reaching for the most, those ones that I am really loving right now, and those are the dresses that I will bring with me on a trip. For this trip, I've chosen not to bring a crinoline skirt, but I will talk about crinolines and how to pack them later on. I'm only bringing 2 dresses on this trip. Isn't that wild? I feel like I could pack 14 dresses and wear them all in 10 days. But we're gonna try and be minimal here. We're trying our best. My goal is to bring 2 dresses and focus more so on separates, things that I can switch in and out and make multiple outfits out of fewer pieces. Make sure that all the dresses you bring have pockets. You deserve pockets. I think I'm a bit of a genius, and when choosing an item to sew for this trip, because you know I love to make things for trips that I go on, instead of making a dress, I used my big monkey brain and decided instead to make separates. So I made a blouse and a skirt that can be worn together as a dress or can be worn separately with different items in my little capsule wardrobe so I can get the most wear out of it. I'm a genius. I think I'm a genius. Now, shoes, dresses, bottoms. Like dresses, bottoms are often those bulkier items that also kind of determine the vibe of your outfit or the functionality of your outfit. As you might have guessed, I don't wear a lot of pants. Not really my thing, especially this time I'm going to a warm destination. However, I am always cold on the airplane. So I'm going to be bringing a pair of high-waisted yoga pants. So high waist is my favorite cut, and they have a bit of a flare at the bottom. So when I'm wearing my ugly but comfy sneakers, they don't look so bad. So I'm bringing one pair of yoga pants and two skirts for this trip. So the skirts are blue, shocking, and are interchangeable with multiple tops that I brought. I'm also bringing a pair of shorts because it will be very hot. These are a pair of me-made shorts that are also high-waisted. So again, always choosing the silhouette and style that I love so that I'm wearing my favorite items when I'm traveling. Bonus tip. Skirts can be worn over dresses to make multiple combinations. So the bodice of your dress can then become a blouse, and you can put a skirt over it to sort of switch things up. Also great if you spill something on your dress, don't worry. Wash that when you get home, cover it up with a skirt, no one will know, and you'll still look really beautiful on your trip. So now that some of those big rocks are out of the way, those are sort of the bigger items and also the more difficult to decide. And then I find tops are pretty simple. Just pick things that go with the items you've already brought. I also include bodysuits in the tops category because they're visible on top. I love wearing bodysuits because they keep that clean line, that nice silhouette. So I'm bringing a bodysuit on this trip that can be worn on or off the shoulder, sort of day to night, and is a great option for going out in the evenings after a full day of sightseeing. Another thing I would recommend when choosing which tops to bring on your trip is colors. Again, making sure that they fit your color scheme, but this is where you mostly want solids. If you have printed bottoms, bring some solid tops, or vice versa. If all of your tops are printed and you just wear jeans with them or just solid colored skirts, fantastic. That's a really great way to go. But I don't like to mix two different prints together because it can get a little crazy. And again, that's why a lot of those capsule wardrobes you see online are just solid neutrals so that everything matches. You can play with prints. It's okay. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. And now we get to the fun stuff, or I guess some of the easiest stuff. That top category is underthings and accessories. So now that you know what you're bringing, you know what underthings you need to bring to be comfortable with what you're wearing. And then, of course, how do we spice up these very few items that we brought with us? Accessories are a really great way to spice up an outfit, and I have found shoe clips. You can bring fairly neutral shoes that are, they go with everything that you've brought. And then I love accessorizing with shoe clips. A really great way to go from day to night with the same pair of flats or what have you. So I am bringing a couple of bow shoe clips that I made myself. You can buy the hardware at the fabric store. You can also spice up outfits with things like hair bows or ribbons. I'm bringing a straw hat and a bunch of different colors of ribbons to put on it so it will match all my different outfits and feel a little bit different every day, even though I'm wearing the exact same hat over and over and over again. So, pro tip. Tip number 4, focus on occasions. Make sure you have what you need for your specific trip. Now, I can't tell you what your occasions are going to be. It's always going to be unique to your needs. However, there are some occasions that are almost guaranteed, and they are travel outfit, key activities, sleepwear, and weather gear. So these are all up to you and will be a little bit different depending on your trip, but make sure that you have something for each of these. So for your airplane or travel outfit, keep a couple things in mind. This is a great opportunity to wear your biggest and bulkiest items. So whether that's your sneakers or your boots, your coat, your crinoline, whatever those big items are that you don't necessarily want to pack, wear those. But also you want to focus on comfort. I'm always cold on airplanes, so I want to make sure that I have cozy socks and a sweater so that I'm comfortable on the plane. Then it's time for key activities. What are you doing on your trip? Why are you going? Are you going on a winery tour? Are you hiking? Are you going to the beach a lot? Tons of museums? Are you going to a ton of restaurants? Are you going for a special occasion? Is someone getting married? Are you a bridesmaid? These are key considerations to choosing what you want to bring for your trip. It is tough to do it all, but find pieces that are versatile that can be worn to multiple different occasions. Sleepwear, pretty much guaranteed. What I like to do is choose publicly appropriate sleepwear that I can actually use as my travel outfit. So I can wear a flannel shirt or a hoodie or leggings, my fuzzy socks, whatever it is that I would normally wear to sleep, I can wear that on the plane as long as it's, again, publicly appropriate. And then when it comes to weather gear, again, look up the weather of where you're going, but you might want to wear your outerwear on the airplane, whether that's a denim jacket, a big puffy coat, a raincoat. Wear those items on the plane so they don't take up tons of space in your suitcase. You can be the vehicle for your heavy things. I like to pack a UV-proof umbrella. I call this a sunbrella. So this is a dual purpose item that protects me from the rain, yes, when it's raining, but also keeps the sun off while I'm traveling. Especially if you're doing a ton of walking through a city, you may not notice how sunburned you're getting. So bring us a little portable shade, a little portable tree. I find that to be a super important item in my arsenal, and you can get really tiny, pack light umbrellas that suit your needs. Alrighty, tip number 5, to address the elephant in the room, the 4 to 5 pairs of underwear for 10 days. What? Tip number 5, wash and wear as you go. It's not rocket science. You wash your clothes when you need them to be washed, right? Same thing as when you're traveling. When I was traveling in India and Australia for 6 months, I only had 2 pairs of socks, one to wear and one to wash. So while I was wearing one pair, the other was drying, and it was a really convenient way to travel. So I can do it, you can too. Laundry on the road. In order to wash things while you're traveling, bring laundry strips, washing powder, or even a bar of soap, like a Sunlight soap bar for spot treatments or for washing things as you go. I recommend getting a universal sink plug. You can get them at the hardware store in the bath or plumbing section, and those can turn any sink into a pluggable sink for becoming your wash basin, essentially. You can hang things to dry over the towel rack or wherever in your hotel room. I'm bringing a lot of white on this trip, so I brought the OxiClean stain remover, and it's super great for spot cleaning things. Just dab it onto your items. If it gets something on it during lunch, it will dry clear, and then you can wash it out later on. So I bring a very small labeled bottle of that in my liquids, and if I'm wearing white and going out for the day, I put that in my day pack, so I have it with me, and it has saved my bacon many times. But what about wrinkles? How do you bring your beautiful cotton sundresses on vacation? Let me tell you. So you can make a very simple de-wrinkle spray. So all it is a little bit of fabric softener in water in a spray bottle. So you can spray this onto your items as they hang on a hanger and let them hang overnight, and the wrinkles will sort of work their way out. Another option, if you don't want to bring another liquid with you, is you can just hang your items in the shower with you, and they will sort of steam as you shower. And of course, most hotels and hostels and even most Airbnbs will have an iron and ironing board. And if you don't want to iron, I get it. Those also have a steam setting, so you can steam your items. Do not use a hair straightener on your vintage clothes. 2 reasons. 1, often it's way too hot and applies heat from both sides, and it can burn your beautiful vintage fabric. More often than not, there's also hair products, whether it's hairspray, hair dye, who knows what, gunk, on a hair straightener, and if you sort of cook that into your fabric, it can be really hard to get it out. So go forth and do as you will, but please don't use hair straighteners for anything other than your hair. Got it? Good. You may also want to pack a couple of hangers on your trip. I know that sounds silly, but often hotel rooms have 1 or 2 hangers, and you might need more for your clothing, especially if you want things to hang to dry, to let them de-wrinkle, and to keep them wrinkle-free once you've ironed them. When washing things on the road, I'm not recommending you wash entire garments. Wash entirely the small things like socks and underwear, but for the bigger items, spot wash the areas that need them, such as the underarms or anywhere that they get sort of stains or dirt on them that's visible. Some ways to prevent needing to wash things on the road are things like dress guards. You can have vintage sew-in fabric ones, like these ones. They have cotton on one side and a rubber backing to prevent your sweat from seeping through to your fabric. You can also get the stick-in variety. They are an adhesive, so I recommend removing them right after you've used them so that adhesive doesn't sort of fuse to the garment. I have had that happen, and it's very sad when that happens. There's not a lot you can do to fix that. But I tend to put these dress guards in items that I wear repeatedly, so things like denim jackets, my dresses, and other items, so don't need to wash those items as often. Okay, my vintage friends, you have waited long enough. Let's get into my specifically vintage tips. So, One of the questions I get asked the most, especially when I'm on a trip, is how did you pack that hat? That is a great question. So a lot of the hats I wear are very structured, and I don't want these to get crushed while I'm traveling. So I would love to bring a hat for every single day of my trip. Maybe even two, one for day, one for night, but that's not always an option. So once you've chosen your big rocks, your shoes, your clothes, once you have all those essentials packed, how much room do you have left for hats, truly? And then fill every corner and crack you can with hats. I've scoured the internet for all the different ways to pack hats, and there are some videos out there, but they mostly focus on baseball caps and cowboy hats, which again, they helped me learn a thing or two about how to pack structured items, but really aren't relevant to the type of hats that I wear. There's lots of options for how to pack your hats. You basically want to create something that will protect them in your luggage. So whether that's a hat box or a wig box, which, you know, for airline travel, I think you might get a funny look from the stewardess of like, I don't think that's regulation. Again, they're a funny shape. You might get weird looks. And if you're a little bit worried, maybe avoid those for airline travel. But if you're taking a bus or a train and it doesn't really matter the shape of the item, yeah, absolutely. You can pack a ton of hats in one of those cases because they are designed for it. In lieu of that, cookie tins. I have found cookie tins to be a really great way to pack hats. Even if the whole hat doesn't fit in it, it can protect the crown of the hat while the brim stays flush to the bottom of your bag or the bottom of your suitcase to keep it nice and flat. So this again protects the structure of the hat itself. If you have a cake tin or something bigger, you can often put the whole hat in there and fill in all the empty spaces with things like hair bows and hair flowers, or even small items like scarves or socks. That can sort of fill in any empty spaces, because again, we're trying to maximize the space we have available. Another option is food storage bins. I have found a couple of round salad bowls that have a lid, and so that rounded shape is great for those clamshell shaped hats that are curved, and it protects the curve of the hat, and you can actually stack several of those hats inside one of those containers, and it's got a lid so everything is safe and protected. Another option, if you like using packing cubes, which I quite like using, they pack your clothes nice and tight, you can fill your hats with clothes and then pack them into a packing cube, making sure that they're protected with clothing items. I have done this, however, I would not recommend it for items that are felt or that have silk flowers on them. Being packed tight into a packing cube can crush the can crush the velvet, and likewise can also squish your lovely silk flowers. Be aware that the limited space available in your suitcase may determine your hat options. So it's up to you to prioritize. Do you really need that extra pair of shoes, or do you want your favorite hat? Again, it's up to you. My needs are quite unique, and I pick my battles. So similar to outerwear, wear your biggest hat on the airplane. Don't get obnoxious, don't be blocking the people behind you. But if you have a sun hat, like my straw hat that I brought to Mexico, I wear that to the airport. I've attached ribbons to it so I can tie it around my neck, so it just sort of hangs behind me while I'm walking around the airport, and it can also hang from the hook behind the seat in front of me in the airplane, so it's not too annoying to carry. I've seen lots of people wear a sun hat on the airplane. It's not that weird. That does, however, mean every time you travel, so whether you're going from one city to another on a bus or a train, you kind of need to maintain that method of transporting that hat throughout your trip, just so you know. Now, big question is, how do you pack crinoline skirts? Sometimes to get that perfect silhouette, or in order to bring one of your favorite dresses, it's not the same without the crinoline skirt giving you that 50s silhouette underneath. They are bulky, they're poofy, they're not ideal for packing, but there are some ways that you can bring your crinoline skirt with you on a trip. So the first option is a packing cube. Just shove that baby into a little packing cube and pack it as small as you possibly can. Just get as much air out as possible. This is a great method. Just make sure that you don't snag the nylon fabric in the zipper when zipping it shut. Why did I choose my biggest crinoline to demonstrate this? My favorite way to transport my crinolines is in a vacuum bag. You can get the kind that you just roll, and they have a vent at the bottom that squeezes the air out, and then they can pack nice and flat in and amongst your other items. This might sound crazy, but I often wear my crinoline skirt on the airplane. I've done this for domestic flights. I love wearing my crinoline on the plane. I found that I can sort of tuck it around me so it doesn't interfere with anybody else around me. Don't be that person who's taken up 6 seats because of your big outfit. as glamorous as that might be. Now, something I haven't tried but I've been thinking about is wearing your crinoline skirt to the airport. And then when you get there, when it's time to get on the flight and get real close to your neighbor, put it into a pillowcase and then use that pillowcase filled with your crinoline as a pillow for the flight. I don't know. If you've tried that, comment below. I would love to know if that works. I think that would be a really great use of space, but haven't tried it myself. Okay, a couple other sort of miscellaneous vintage tips. How to keep your hair looking perfect while abroad can be really challenging. I have flown in my curlers many times, but be prepared for the security agents to ask you to remove your hair scarf. So it's embarrassing, but you know what? We do it in the name of glamour. I have been asked, ma'am, is your head covering religious? And I have said, only if glamour is my religion. And they say, yeah, sorry, you're gonna have to take that off. So I've been in many airports with my curlers out, and that's just a brief blip on the timeline of that journey. So I can wear my rollers on the airplane, and then when I arrive, take the rollers out, and then I'm fresh and lovely for the trip. Something else I found very convenient is hairnets. So especially if you're wearing a hat, you can tuck most of your hair into a hairnet, leaving the front bits out so you've got a little bit of shape and structure. And then the hairnet keeps everything nice and tidy, and it keeps that sculpted look, even if you're riding a bike, if you're on a windy boat, or whatever the case may be. Hairnets are also really great saving grace if your curls didn't set properly, or if you didn't have the chance to set them and they're sort of falling nice and loose, and you want that sort of more tidy look. You can definitely tuck them into a hairnet and no one will notice. As well, I've also been rhinestoning my hairnets so that I have like hair bling. That's next level, but I will definitely be bringing one or two of those on this trip for the glamour. This final miscellaneous tip is not vintage related, but just in general. Almost everywhere that you're going, guaranteed, almost guaranteed, there are stores there. So don't panic about packing every specific thing. There are items that you can buy when you arrive. If you're not picky about your toothpaste or your sunscreen, you can buy those items when you get there. So don't worry about fitting everything into your tiny little liquids bag. I recommend scoping out the neighborhood around where you're staying, see where the local pharmacy is or a grocery store, so you can pick up those items that you don't necessarily want to be carrying across the ocean. So I've given you the rundown of sort of how I plan my packing for trips. It's a little all over the place, it's sort of structured, sort of not, but that's kind of my vibe. Here is my final tip. Are you ready? Stuff happens, okay? It's not a failure on your part in terms of preparation if something goes wrong. You might stain your favorite shirt. You might lose a shoe because you didn't mind the gap. You can replace things when you're on your trip. Be prepared to add to your wardrobe while away. You are going on a trip to experience new and unknown things, and that is part of the joy of it. Be sure to save room in your suitcase for new things. Let that be a fun part of your trip, not something to make you worried about. So don't overpack, and that way you've got some space in your suitcase for something fun to bring back. So go forth, pack light, be fabulous, and have so much fun on your next trip. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe, and in the comments, please tell me if I missed anything. If there are any pro vintage packing tips that you have for wearing your vintage style while traveling, I would love to hear them. Please comment below your favorite packing tips, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.